And now, super excited, super proud to present our next speaker, who is a current member of the PowerToFly team, Oluebube Princess Egbuna. So, Princess.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I would like to share my screen if you don't mind.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Princess. You will be talking about how to best leverage the JAMstack to quickly move from ideation to MVP. Thank you so much.
Can you see my screen, everyone?
Yes, we can see it.
Oh, great. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about leveraging the JAMstack to quickly move from ideation to MVP. Everyone has an idea. I have an idea, you have an idea. And whether that idea is to somehow help you in solving the little problems that you have or the problems that other people have, or even to make money, I mean, those ideas are very, very valid, you know. And yeah, so what exactly is the JAMstack? Because I have just 30 minutes to talk about the JAMstack, I'm not going to go into deep details about it. I'm going to try as much as possible to wrap it up in 30 minutes. So JAMstack simply means JavaScript, APIs, and markup. And one might quickly think, is this not just another word for static sites? It depends on how you think about it. So when we talk about JavaScript, it doesn't have to be vanilla JavaScript. It could be any JavaScript framework, your React, your Vue, your AngularJS. And then when we talk about APIs, they have to be reusable APIs, and then the markup path. So when it comes to the markup path, we talk about SSGs, which are static site generators. They include Hugo, they include Gritsum, and so many of them out there. My name is Oluebube Princess Egbuna, and I'm a full stack engineer at PowerToFly. I mean, I work with the best team in the world, the most amazing team. I mean, my colleagues, they can tell you PowerToFly is, it's just the best out there. And prior to PowerToFly, I worked at Andela and a couple of other companies that may not even remember that I was once there. Just in case you're not able to ask your questions by the time the talk is done, you can reach me on Twitter at Princess Oluebube. Mind that there's just one S, and you can reach me on LinkedIn via Egbuna Oluebube Princess, and my personal website is ebube.me. So feel free to reach out to me in case you're not able to ask your questions on this chat. So like I said initially, static versus dynamic really depends on how you think about it. If you look at Wikipedia, Wikipedia will tell you that static sites are really sites that you cannot interact with, but the web has evolved more than that. Like, even when you see static sites these days, they are really very interactive. So I don't like to think about it in terms of experience or interactivity, but in the way that these web applications or websites are served and architecture. Let's look at what a typical request looks like. So when I go to my browser and I type www.example.com, what really happens? What really goes on behind the scene is that from my browser, it goes to a content delivery network that is typically between this web server and then this web browser and this web server that you see here. So a lot of times there's a content delivery network in between, and then there's a load balancer also that's going to direct your request to whichever server is going to handle that request. And then from the server, it's maybe does some backend logic and then maybe updates data on the database and then goes back in the same direction to you as a user. But then what JAMstack does, or static, for example, since we're still talking about static, you just make a request to the browser, it goes to a content delivery network and gets you whatever data that you need. And with that, you see that all this other part of this architecture is removed. And then the entire thing is just simplified into these two steps. Just your browser making a request and then going to fetch something from a content delivery network and getting it across to you. At PowerToFly, I don't really do JAMstack, but with my private projects, I do a lot of JAMstack. So yeah. So when you ask people typically, why do you need a server? Because it's the norm, a lot of people would go ahead to give you a lot of reasons why you need a server. But then when you really think about it, when you really think of the facts or ask yourself if we can really do away with this server, you'd find out that it's something that is really doable. So a lot of people answer that we need a server for interactivity. So what interactivity do you need? An example would be authentication. So because technology has advanced so much, there are services on the cloud that are able to do this for us. There's a service called Auth0, and then there are other services as well on the cloud that are able to handle authentication for us. You might answer that you need your forms interactivity in terms of forms, but then there are also other services on the cloud that handle these things for us. So do we really need a server for interactivity? I mean, I'll just leave that to you to answer. And then some other people would say to host our databases that host our databases for us, like Azure, there's Firebase, and all this, our database is basically hosted there. So do we really need that server? Again, I leave you to answer that question. And then our files, when you talk about files, Netlify, for example, hosts your static files for free, you know? And then there are lots and lots of reasons, like we'll always find reasons to back whatever claim that we think is valid. And that is totally fine. That is completely fine. Like the stack that you use at the end of the day is totally up to you. But then I just want to present to you another stack that might help you move faster. So I want to touch a bit on serverless and microservices. I have been saying that there are a lot of functions or services on the cloud that could help you do these things or abstract your backend entirely and leave all the infrastructure, security, and all help you just leave that part to be handled by the cloud while you just focus on the design of your web application and the front end entirely. So if you go to nobackend.org, I'll try to share my slides at the end of this talk so that you'll be able to have access to these links. So if you go to nobackend.org, you're going to see a list of services that are out there that you can use for your backend if you want to abstract your backend out. And then if you also go to serverlesslibrary.net, there are a whole lot of them, a whole list of services that you can use. So like I said, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we need to write server code for some of the cases. For example, if you're building real-time applications that need to be updated in real time, as we know, serverless, for example, sometimes those functions sleep. And then when we need them, we need to wake them up, kind of. Yeah, and sometimes it might take a few seconds or a few minutes to do that. So if you're building an application that needs to be updated in real time, for example, a game that requires very high interactivity, feel free to write your server-side code. So I believe that the more complex it is, the more easy it is to break. If you look at the picture that we showed in the beginning of web browsers and how your request goes from the browser all the way to the server and then the database and all that. you see that there is a lot of moving parts in your code. There's the logic, there's the database, there are a lot of things that need to be maintained, and it's really complex. And then when you have a giant monolithic application, it's more likely to break. It's easier to break. Like it might not break on the database side, it might break on your backend logic part, or any part of it can break. But then if you look at this, the browser to the CDN and just back, the number of cases in which this can break has been reduced. So, and then that complexity has really been reduced. So it's less likely to break. And then, so what if we make most of our web applications, what if we serve them as static sites? It's just something you should think about. What if we do that and then leave out all this complexity and then just let the cloud to handle it? People that have built the services, let them handle it, both the infrastructure, the maintenance, and the security, and just focus on the front end, the user experience, and what the user really needs, which is basically what you need as a business that is just starting up. So I'm going to give a very nice example. Let's say that you want to build a site that sells baby clothing for programmer parents. So if I'm a programmer, I can go to your site and get printed stuff for my baby. So I've also added a few photos, really cute photos of baby clothes. So typically in a typical architecture, what is going to happen is that you're going to think about user management, you're going to think about inventory management, you're going to think about where to host your images, you think about payments, your blogging and your social media, and a whole lot of things. And usually we're going to be tempted to try to build all these things and put everything in one application and deploy this entire application as one giant, tightly coupled monolithic application. But then what does the JAMstack approach do? In the JAMstack approach, we just focus on the design and the front end. And then whenever we need an advanced feature, using JavaScript, we use an API to make a call to that service that we need. So we really don't need to build all this into our application. We just get them on demand as we need them. So this is the major difference between what we are going to do typically and what we're going to do when we take the JAMstack approach. So what does this kind of architecture do for you really? So if you look at the image again, I keep referring back to this image because it depicts what typically happens from request to response. So you see that the surface area for attacks, security attacks, has been reduced. So if you typically security attacks, a lot of attacks happen when you make a request from the browser and there has to be maybe a change in the database or something. Like a lot of attacks happen during that process. But if we don't need to do that, then the biggest attack that can happen on our site is really DDoS, like people flooding your sites with a lot of requests at the same time. Like that's the biggest attack you can have. You don't need to be worried about your data or very serious security issues. And then another thing that this kind of architecture does for us is performance. So if we have to take this route, the route of web browser, CDN, load balancer, web server, database, and all that, if we have to take that route, it takes a whole lot of time to do that, as against just having to go from the browser to a CDN. So the time it takes is reduced, so speed is automatically increased for your web application or your website, which is something very good for users. Like users always love sites that are very fast. Nobody likes to wait for maybe even 2 seconds And then another thing that another advantage that this comes with is atomic and immutable deploys. So I'm going to show you a sample deploy on my own personal website. So this is an example of my own personal website, nothing really serious, nothing big. And then this site is built on the JAMstack, and I've deployed it on Heroku. So if you look at the deploys here, you're going to see that all the deploys that I've ever made are very, very atomic. And if I want to go back to the most, the first deploy that I ever made, or any deploy at all, I can easily go back to that deploy and then click on it. And if I want to make my site to go back to that state that it was at this point in time, August 19, 2019, I just have to click on publish deploy, and then my site is going to be deployed, and it's going to be exactly the same as it was on that same date. And if I want to go back to maybe the most recent deploy that I had, I just have to come here and then just click on deploy as well, and then have my sites deployed. So these deploys are very, very small. Like maybe when I make a change to a file, I just merge to master, and then this deploy just automatically happens. And they're also immutable. Like I already said, I can easily go back to any of the deploys that I have made in the past and just continue with that. So this is an example of a site that is actually built, deployed, or served statically. If you know about smashingmagazine.com, yeah, this site is actually served statically. And then you can see that there's a whole lot going on here. I also have it open on my browser. So I'll just show you that quickly. You can see that there's a whole lot going on here as well. And I think your big idea or your next idea can also be part of this. And you see how very fast this site loads. So what do you really need as a small business or at ideation phase? So what you need is a proof of concept. So I have an idea and I want to prove that this idea works and is worth investing in. And I don't want to waste money. So I just want to prove that my concept works, and then I want a good user experience, and then I want quick delivery. And if you look at the JAMstack, fortunately, it gives us all these things at the same time. You can be able to prove that your concept works without spending a whole lot of money on hiring a lot of developers. And then you can give your focus on the front end to give users a very good experience. And because the JAMstack also provides speed and makes your application much faster, users can easily have a very good experience on your site or on your application. And then the moment you make a change, you can easily deploy it with confidence. So you can get feedback from your customers immediately and make very quick iterations without having to wait for days or weeks or months to deliver something to production. So how can this architecture help you move faster? So like I already said initially, you can build something and then ship it immediately. And then I've experienced this kind of thing where you deploy something and then put it on a staging environment, it works. Put it on another environment, it works. And then when it goes to production, it doesn't work for some reason which we don't know about. But if you use the JAMstack, you can be sure that if I build because JAMstack applications are already pre-built, I'm very sure that if I build my application and deploy, it's going to work the same on every environment, irrespective of what type of environment it is, because all my files are already pre-built. you know, and then we can also avoid bloated engineering teams. So if you look at the initial architecture, you see that each part of the application needs someone to manage it. The database part needs somebody to manage it. The part of the code that manages your business logic needs someone to manage it. And then you also need someone on the front end. And then you just need a very bloated engineering team to manage all these things. But then using the JAMstack, you can hire maybe just 1 or 2 people who just focus on the front end while leveraging on the cloud to do every other thing on the back end for you. So some of the tools for the JAMstack include Hugo. So for my site, the one that I just showed you recently, I used Gridsome. And then there are a whole lot of other tools that are available out there that you could use. I've also used Gatsby before, and then it's very amazing. For people that use React, Gatsby is awesome. And then for people, Gridsome goes with Vue.js. So because I write a bit of Vue, when I wanted to learn Vue, I decided to also build my site using Vue. That was why I went with Gridsome. Otherwise, there are also other amazing tools out there that you can leverage and you can use. So for deployments, some of the tools that you can use include Netlify. Netlify is my go-to. Like it's very, very easy to deploy something on Netlify. So I always go for Netlify. So I'm going to just show you an example of deployment on Netlify. So if I just want to deploy something, for example, I'll just click on new site and then go to my GitHub and select the repository that I want to deploy. I'll select this repository and I'll click on deploy sites, and that will be it. So that's the reason why I use Netlify. Like the interface is so simple. I don't need to worry about installing any CLI tools and all those bloated stuff. Yeah, so that's why I use Netlify. But then you can feel free to use whatever you want to use. When it comes to tooling, you can choose to use whatever you want to use. And then, so what's your next big idea? I bet you that whatever you want to build can be built on the JAMstack. So I'd encourage you to go Jam and save more money for yourself, and also go Jam and trust your security and deployments, and then have happy developers and happy customers. So a lot of people don't know that if you have happy developers, your developers are going to try to make your customers happy. The JAMstack is a stack that makes a lot of developers happy because you remove a lot of things from the developers part, a lot of unnecessary work from the developers, and then just let them focus on what they have to do. And this in turn is going to make your customers happy because your developers are going to ensure that they deliver features and a product that makes your customers happy as well. So go Jam and have your developers happy and your customers happy as well. So on the slides, I've also added links to resources that you can use to quickly build JAMstack sites in minutes and in seconds. So when I share the slides, you could also just click on the slide on the link and then try to generate your own site as well. And thank you. That should be it. I'm very open to questions. Okay, I see a lot of questions on the chats.
Thank you, Princess. I'm wondering if you could pop the link for the slides onto the chat box so that everybody can have that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and Jose had asked a question here. Have you thought about the role on user data privacy as in the of a JAMstack? I can see this as a major disadvantage as it seems to rely on other services to control this data. What are your thoughts?
So first of all, I think that it depends on the kind of application that you want to build. For some people, privacy is very, very important to them. But then the cloud also provides this, right? Depending on the kind of service that you opt for, the cloud also provides this. So I'm not preaching that you should go all JAMstack. If your focus is security, like your most important, the biggest thing that you focus on is data privacy and security, you can also get dedicated servers on the cloud and then have your data on the cloud on your own dedicated server. You don't need to necessarily go all JAMstack. It depends on you and it depends on your engineering team as well. This is just a way to help you to get quickly from your ideation phase to your MVP. As you grow as a business, your needs could change at any point in time, and you could always make changes to your engineering architecture and framework as you wish.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have a question for Princess? Usha is saying, great overview of JAMstack. I liked your presentation, especially as you showed how easy it is by using examples of the sites.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for Princess? And what are you working on at the moment, Princess? Would you like to share any of your current projects that you have on the go here at PowerToFly or privately?
Oh, great. At PowerToFly, we are always iterating because our customer needs keep changing and then our priorities keep changing at every point in time. So we actually need to make sure that we deliver the best to our customers and to our users. So that is my focus at PowerToFly. On the side, I mostly like to work on my blog, a few other repositories that I have on GitHub. I'm very enthusiastic about AI and machine learning, and I spend a lot of time trying to grasp those concepts along with data. Also, I like visualizing data and having insight into what data could mean for maybe a business or for myself or in the future. So I spend a lot of time doing that. So I've shared a link to the slides on the chat, so you can easily grab them from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we are all here super grateful to our tech team because they have provided all of us with a very seamless Diversity Reboot 2020 experience. I think I'm not very tech savvy, but you all have made this such a dream. So thank you so much, Princess, for your talk and for everything you do here at PowerToFly.
Thank you. Thank you.